Data Voyagers.
We make an estimated 35,000 decisions every year. Most of them are small: what to eat, what to wear, whether to read the notifications or ignore it. But others, they shape careers, relationships, businesses, the house we live in, our lives. Some decisions are made in milliseconds, others paralyze us for days. Some we make from the gut, others from a dashboard. But there's the question: can decision making be thought, modeled, and optimized? Welcome to the Data Voyages podcast, navigating the story behind the numbers. I'm Igor Alcantara. Oi, pessoal. And today's episode is about the science of decision making in the algorithm of choice. And as always, I have here with me my friend and fellow Click ambassador and co-host of this podcast, Angelika Klidas. Hi, Angelika. Thanks for making the decision to be here today.
Well, it was a very easy decision this time. I think even made with System 1, where what we are going to discuss later on. So, hoi, Igor. And hoi allemaal, fijn dat jullie er weer zijn.
I found it very nice that you greeted me in my language. I don't think I'm able to do the same in Dutch. It's in Portuguese, it's just two letters. It's so much simpler.
Uh, well, this was actually what I said here was, hi, everybody. I'm happy that you're here. So,
Okay.
hoi or oi, I think it's about the same. It's hi.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Very good. So we have a great episode prepared for you today, and for you not to miss any of our episodes, make sure to subscribe to the Data Voyages podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, anywhere. And while you're there, give us 5 stars. This helps our show to be recommended to more people. Also, don't forget to visit our website, datavoyages.net, and check out our blog and our online store, where we have lots of cool products from clothing, stickers, desk mats, and much more. This will help us keep this project running. And talking about support, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, IPC Global. This episode of the Data Voyages podcast is brought to you by IPC Global, proud sponsor of Click AI Reality Tour in the United States. The Click AI Reality Tour is happening in multiple locations around the globe, bringing real-world AI into the spotlight and showing how it's transforming analytics today. Here in the US, you can join the tour in San Jose, California on August 20th, Chicago on August 26th, and New York City on September 4th. If you're attending, make sure to stop by the IPC Global booth. We'll show you how our award-winning team helps organizations harness the full power of Click, from AI-driven insights to predictive analytics, so you can make smarter, faster decisions. Come see what's possible when real AI meets real businesses' challenges, and how IPC Global can help you solve yours. Okay, so let's get the episode started. And you might be wondering, decision making, what that's decision making and decision science has to do with data. This is Data Voyages. Well, it has everything to do with it, because at its core, data is a decision making tool. That's why we work with data for decision making. So we gather data not just to observe, but to act, to launch or hold, to invest or abandon, to say yes or no. Michael Pond, Click CEO, he says, I don't remember the exact quote, but he says that data without action, it's pointless. So understanding how we make decisions as humans, as organizations, or machines make us better at building systems, designing products, leading teams, and yes, making data informed decisions that actually work. So, Angelika, let's get started.
Well, let's start with the beginning of everything, the human side, and we'll talk about the autonomy of a decision. So to start to start it actually begins with the most fundamental question. What is a decision really? So it might seem obvious, a choice between two or more options. But under the surface, a decision is a cognitive act of commitment. So you weigh possibilities, imagine outcomes, evaluate risks, assign value, and eventually you take action, hopefully fed by data. Or you do not act, which is itself a decision. Psychologists and behavioral economists have spent decades dissecting what happens in that moment of choice. And one of the most influential models comes from Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. I think it's Russian, right? Tversky, who introduced the idea of dual system thinking. The link to their papers are in this episode's post, but in summary, it works as following. System one is our fast, automatic, intuitive brain. It's what lets you dodge a ball or finish someone's sentences. I believe I wrote, I saw a presentation today about the cognitive brain, system one, which is about 95% of our decisions are made with system one. 5% is slower, right? And that's system two. It's more deliberate, it's more logical. It's what helps you to solve math problems or write SQL queries and in our favorite tool, ClickScripts. Now, most of our daily decisions are governed by System 1. It's a survival mechanism, so it's efficient, it's quick, and it does not spend too much brain energy. But it's also vulnerable to biases, emotion, and mental shortcuts that can lead us to wrong conclusions, wrong decisions, especially in high stakes or unfamiliar situation. And this is where the most biases and prejudice are formed. That's where actually system two ideally steps in. It runs the numbers, it does the analysis, it weighs trade offs. And here's the catch, system two is mega lazy. It does not want to engage unless forced. It takes energy and time. So often, even when a problem looks rational, we let system one steer the ship. And add to this idea of bounded rationality, which is a term coined by Herbert Simon. He argued that humans are not perfectly rational agents. We do not evaluate every option. We do not calculate every outcome. And we do not optimize every choice. Instead, we sacrifice. We sacrifice the things that we do. We go with the first option. That's good enough. In other words, if you think we make decisions based on data and facts, you're wrong. We make mistakes based on emotions and especially led by fear. As an example, imagine you want to buy a new shirt. The perfect choice would be to visit every store in the city, check every shirt online, compare all the prices and materials, and then buy the very best one. But that takes a lot of time and effort. A good enough choice is what most people do. You go to one or two stores, find a shirt you like, that fits you and it's not too expensive and you buy it. It might not be it might not be the best shirt in the whole world, but it's good enough for you. Another example is when we are led by fear and investing money. Imagine there are two people, Alex and Ben, or Igor and Angelika, and we are thinking about investing money in the stock market. A logical choice would be that we take a look at the historical data over many years, the stock market has really gone up. So investing for the long time is usually a very good financial decision. An emotional choice, driven by fear, Alex, he constantly sees news headlines about the market crashing. And that's kind of disturbing, right? He hears stories of people losing all their savings. So he gets a little bit scared. And even though the facts suggest investing is smart for the long run, the fear of losing money is too strong. And he decides to keep all his money in simple savings account where it earns very little. but feels much safer. So in this case, Alex Fear changed his choice. He avoided a potentially better final decision, not because of facts, but because of the feeling of fear. And that feeling was more powerful than the logic. And he made a choice of the feeling of risk rather than making the most logical financial decisions. And this shows how emotions, especially on uh, a powerful one like fear, can lead us to make choices. And these choices are not based on data or facts, but they are. It's the way how we protect ourselves from bad feelings. So bounded rationality means we don't make always the perfect, most logical decision. Instead, we make a choice that is simply good enough to solve our problem right now. We do this because we have the time or the energy to look at every single option. And why? Well, we live in the real world with limited time. My WhatsApp is going. I think somebody is texting. So we live in the real world with limited time, limited information, limited processing power, and our brains runs in capacity. And that's not a failure, that's efficiency. And yet, in data work, whether you are building a beautiful dashboard, training a model, or designing a business strategy, or designing project plans, the assumption is often that decisions are or should be purely rational. But they're not in, not for us humans, not even for organization or governments. Even in data-driven environments, choices are filtered through layers of buyers, power structures, incentives, habits, and that makes it very difficult, I think, for organizations as well. So before we go into and talk about the algorithms and the mathematical strategies, we have to acknowledge something. Every decision, no matter how analytical, begins with a human mind, shaped by evolution, emotions, and uncertainty. And that is why the science of decision making matters. If we understand how we think, we can build better systems. And if we understand where we blind, what our blind spot is, we can use data to eliminate, not dictate our choices. And I think, Igor, you have an interesting topic around decision making called the optimal stopping problem, right?
Exactly. But before that, so you mentioned Daniel Kahneman. Actually, it's one of my favorite books. I was just reaching on my library, that's Thinking Fast and Slow. Um,
I should get
Actually,
that one, right?
it's a yeah, it's not. It's a pretty like heavy book. There's a lot of pages. Like my edition is I don't know over uh, around like 500 pages. But it's a really good book that talks about like how we think. And actually, the Think Fast and Slow talks about how the brain works, like two systems, the
Yeah.
fast and slow, the system one and system two. And coincidentally, is not related to this episode on purpose, but my latest article on the Data Vargas blog, it's about an HRM, a new type of AI that uses this concept and is way more advanced than the LLM models, the ChatGPT, etc. But
Yeah.
let's
That's
talk
the
about it.
model with the slow and the fast, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I even mentioned this book on the article. But let's talk about the
Nice.
optimal stopping problem. And that is about something we all struggle with. Because every decision, there's a trade off. No decision, unless there's like, should I use click or Power BI? Of course, click is an easy decision. But other than that, all decisions, they have like a trade off. So, one thing that we struggle is when to stop looking and you actually make a choice. So let me give you a few examples. Let's say you're searching for a new apartment. And let's say you decided that you have 30 days to find one. You can go back and pick the previous one after you pass it because it might have been picked up by somebody else. How do you know when to stop browsing and you just go for the best option? So this problem has actually a name in mathematics. It's called the optimal stopping problem. It deals with situations where you must take a one-time choice, and once you pass the option, it's gone forever. So Classic examples like hiring a candidate is an example, selling a house, or even finding a romantic partner. The problem is that if you are too picky, the best option might be gone and you have to stay with what is left. Let's say, oh, you choose too much. Then at the end of the day, everybody's already taken or every option is already taken. And then you just take the one that is not good, but is just the only one left. However, if you're too anxious and you make decisions too early, you might not give the chance to the actual best option. So there is a balance. And what is the best strategy? When to stop searching and you start deciding. Mathematicians crushed the numbers and they found something surprising. The optimal strategy is to spend the first 37% of your time or options just observing. Don't make a decision. 35% of the time or options, you just observe. Do not choose anything or anyone. Then once you pass that observational window of 37%, you pick the next option that is better than the previous ones. That's what that's what scientists call the 37% rule. Oh, we say 37%. Technically, if we very strict in the mathematics, is 1 divided by E. E is a constant of Euler, the German mathematician. And 1 divided by Euler is 2.718 something. One of those magic numbers in math, like pi. So Euler is one of those numbers. So 1 divided by Euler, it's around 36.8%. So we just round up to 37. But anyway, let's break it down. So let's say you are hiring someone and you plan to look at 100 candidates. That's your plan. I want to interview or look at 100 candidates. And you found like the third candidate, it's amazing. Don't hire that person. You should pass the first 37%, which is 37 candidates. So pass the first 37, and then starting on the 38th, select the first one who's better than all of the previous 37. You find one that is better, then you hire it. If no one meets that bar, then you get the last option, which is not the optimum one. So there's a risk, yes. There's always a risk. But mathematically, the risk is lower than just deciding early or just deciding at random. So it maximizes your chances to get the best one. But it's not a guarantee. I mean, it's not, of course. So you might be thinking, well, that sounds too rigid. Yeah, you're right. In the real world, we rarely know how many total options we'll see. Well, what if there's only 12 apartments or 60 jobs applications? Or we don't know. But the key is that the principle of this 37% rule holds water even when you don't know the exact number. So the real thing that teaches us is that you first observe and you choose later. Don't be too anxious to decide. Don't pick like the first option. Second, you have to establish a benchmark. That's my parameter. The 37 helps you. It doesn't have to be the exact number, but if you decide, I'm going to observe for 1 week and then I'll decide whatever is best after that, it kind of applies as well. And also another thing we learn is don't jump at the first decent option, or don't wait too long so then you're stuck with whatever is left. So there's a balance, and that's how you calculate it. Around a little bit over a third, actually a fourth, then you should make a decision. Now, which it statistically also makes sense because then you have a good sample size to understand, how's the market of apartment of developers or whatever you're looking. Now, this rule has also some real world applications beyond housing or even dating people. Like in recruiting, it's one of the classic examples. It helps whoever's hiring to decide how long to screen candidates before making a move and making decisions. In venture capital, it makes help investors to decide when to commit to a startup pitch. And in personal decisions, it can prevent regret from maybe settling too early or maybe waiting too long. And here's the actual twist. The 37% rule only works if your goal is to pick the single best option. If you're okay with just good enough, or if revisiting past options is allowed, then the math changes, of course. Let's say if you have the option to interview all of the candidates and then later decide, that works. But if in a very competitive market, like Click developers, a very competitive market, they don't become available for too long. So then you have to make the decision faster. Otherwise, the best option will be gone. So this will apply. Now, let's break it down. Why 37%? It's just like some random math. Oh, I just like Euler number, and then I'll just do 1 divided by Euler. And no, there's actually a mathematical problem. And the question that the mathematicians were asked was this: if I want to pick the best option out of a group, let's say group of candidates, how long should I wait before I start seriously considering someone? What is my sample size of observation? So they found that the best strategy is to observe without choosing for the first 1 divided by Euler, which is the 36.8, which is the 37%. And that is related to the laws of probability. Let me give you an example. The goal is, if you choose randomly, you have a certain chance of getting the best candidates. I want to get above random. So my chances are better than just choosing randomly. So let's say you're hiring for a Click data architect position, and you have 3 candidates, exactly 3 candidates. But all the companies are also trying to hire for those same candidates. So you interview them one at a time, random order. You don't know who actually is going to be better before you interview them. So interview the first candidate. After you interview the first candidate, or even before, what is the chance that the first candidate is the best? Well, I have 3 candidates. I interview one. The chance that this one is the best is 1/3, right? Very simple. Probability 1/3 or 33%. Great. Now, this is very Bayesian statistics. You have information, then you change your priors, you change your perspective. So you interview the first candidate, you kind of like it, but you do not hire. You decide, you listen to this episode and you decided to follow this rule, and then you go to the second candidate. Now, after you interview the second candidate, you already know if that candidate is better than the first one or not, because you are now at this point, you interview 2 candidates, so you know if candidate 2 is better or not. So with that information, what is the chance? Let's say the candidate 2 is better than the first one. Then you should hire. Don't interview the third one, hire the second. Why is that? Well, what is the chance that the third one is even better? Or actually, the opposite. What is, actually, it doesn't matter. But what's the chance that the second candidate is the best one if you know that candidate is better than the first? It's 50%. Because the first candidate is no longer in the game because you already have that information. If the second candidate is the best, now you only have the third one in the game. So the chance that the second one is the best is 50% because you only have another one. That's very similar to the Monty Hall problem. So then you should hire. Why? Because 50% is better than 33%, which was your original probability. So the odds probability, in terms of probability, interviewing 3 candidates, if the second one is better than the first, you should hire. If it is not, then the chance of the third one being better than both, it's higher. So then you go to the third one. Because then you reverse. The chances of the third one being the worse than the second is 33%. So, because then we need to consider the first one as well. So that's apply to 3 candidates. Now, this strategy gives you better than random chances of selecting the best one. So in 3 candidates, you should select the second if the second is better than the first, or the third if the second is not better than the first. Now, here's the cool part. If you expand this to 10 candidates, that number of how many you have to interview before making a decision, that number becomes closer and closer to the 37%. So if you have 10 candidates or 100 candidates or 1,000 candidates, the math, it's basically the same. You get closer to that 37%. Right? So 1/3 is 33%. So that's why the 37% is not the first or second candidate, it's something in between. So that's why the second candidate is already starting to choosing when whatever candidate is better than the observation window. So the math applies that as you increase your sample size, you get closer and closer to that until if you make the sample size equals to infinity, the math is 1 divided by Euler, which is the 37%. So that's a strategy. Reject the first 37% of candidates or partners or whatever you're doing, and they are your reference point. And then after that, the first one that is better than your observation window, the 37%, you should decide it. Okay? You should. So you gather information first, and then you make a decision. And actually, there's something we should apply to many decisions. Before making a decision, gather data, gather information, gather sample size, and then you have data to make data-driven decisions. So sometimes making better decisions means resisting the urge to decide until the time is right. Now, Angelika, you have something to tell us about exploration, right? I mean, we did a Voyagers. I mean, the Voyagers explore. So let's talk about exploration, which is actually very, very close to this concept.
Yeah. But can I ask you a question? Because I'm a little bit intrigued by the optimal stopping problem.
Yes.
Um, um, can you so I want to try to. I know we didn't prepare for it, but let me try to ask you a question. So, if you had that unlimited amount of information, would you still face an optimal stopping problem, or does uncertainty always creep in, no matter how much you know?
Well, when we have that's a great question. When you have uncertainty, we have a tool in science that help us to make decisions. That's called statistics.
Hmm.
When we know everything, we don't need statistics much. I mean, there's a few statistics we can use, like the descriptive, but probability actually, not statistics. Probability is the science of uncertainty. So a lot of like the quantum physics equations are probability functions, by the way, because there's a lot of uncertainty. So because I don't know, if I know I want to hire someone, and the best person, let's say I want to hire a replacement to replace me as a director of education at IPC Global, and they tell me you can hire anyone you want in the world. Well, I know who's the best person is Angelika, so I don't need to search. But if you don't know, you need to search. Then, in the world of uncertainty, where I'm not sure about things, probability helps me. If I have
Okay.
to guess a random person, this person, I know, was the person height or was this person condition about this or that. If I had to just guess, I don't know. Then I can use probability. What's the probability of this person being tall or short or etc. based on the data I have? Let's say I had to guess someone's height, and people say, so I don't know. So I get like the population average. It's a pretty good guess. And then someone tells me, oh, that person is a woman. I say, well, a woman, a cis woman, they are on average shorter than men. So then I adjust my findings, and oh yeah, Maybe it's a little bit shorter. But then they said, no, they're Dutch. Well, Dutch are the taller people in the planet, the number one country in for average height. So they know it's probably higher. And so that's how probability works.
Okay. Interesting, huh? It's an
Yeah.
interesting topic, how to
Mhm.
make decisions or and using the examples. So, yeah, we have the exploration topic, and I love it, right? So let's continue with a maybe a daily topic that some of us have. So let's say you're hungry after work and you're craving for something satisfying. You have two options, right? You go to your favorite local restaurant where you know the food is great, or you try that new place that just opened. It might be amazing, but also it might be not so amazing. It might be awful. And that's the explore versus the exploit dilemma. So, exploit means choosing the options you already know, that is good. And explore means trying something new. It might be better, it might be worse, but at least you learn something from it. And this, it's not just about food. The same tensions show up in every single everyday decision we make, right? Should the company stick with this proven product line, uh, exploit, or invest in R&D to make new products? So explore. Or should you keep reading the same blog, or follow a new voice? Or should you keep advertising on the same channel or test a new one? In computer science and decision theory, this is formalized as the multi-armed bandit problem. And it took me some time to understand really what was happening here. Um, as multi-arm, the single arm, right, is the bandit in the casinos, the slot machines. Um, the name is inspired by that one. So imagine you are standing in front of a multiple slot machine, aka the one-armed machine, right? The bandit. And each with a different but unknown payout rate. So your goal is to maximize your total reward over time. But here's the twist. If you just exploit, keep pulling the lever, that worked best early on, you might miss out on machines with longer term returns. So if you just explore, constantly trying new machines, you might never settle long enough to gain real value of any of them. And actually, I was yesterday. We were at the fair in my town, Horen. We have the second biggest fair of the Netherlands here for 1 week, and it's a big party. Everybody is out there from the village or the town, I have to say. And we tried this dozer, right? That pushes coins, so you can win coins with a color, and then you can find a present. And we were just trying to find out um, where to go to and how to uh, so that we could win the coins, right? And at the end, we switched two machines, and then the third machine paid out very well, almost 50,000 points. So that was a lot. So actually, what important here is that we need that challenge to find the optimal balance for that we could use. So, and there are algorithms for that, right? There are algorithms to find different strategies to solve the problem. Um, it's the epsilon greedy algorithm. So most of the time you exploit, say 90% of your time, but every now and then you explore randomly, 10%. And another example for the epsilon greedy algorithm, imagine you have a favorite restaurant you go to every Friday night and you almost order your favorite dish, but you know it's good. That's exploitation. However, you've set a rule for yourself, one Friday a month, your epsilon, you'll choose, close your eyes, and point a random item on the menu to try something new. That is exploration. So, explore, exploitation 90% of the time, ordering your favorite reliable dish. Exploration 10% of the time, trying randomly a dish. This strategy is very simple, and it ensures you that you don't miss out on a potentially new favorite dish, right? Sometimes it's just good to try out new things. Um, then we have the algorithm of upper confidence bound, we call that in short UCB. Back to the one-armed bandit, we prioritize options with both average rewards and a high uncertainty. Basically, try what could surprise you the most. As an example, imagine you're a food blogger, and you are reviewing restaurants in the city that you are visiting, and you want to buy the best food ever, but you also want to try new and exciting places. The UCB strategy is like being an adventurous foodie. You choose your next restaurant based on two things: how good the reviews are, the high average award, you are drawn to places with good reviews, or how few reviews there are. That's the high uncertainty. And you're also intrigued by a new mysterious restaurant with only a couple of reviews, and it could be a hidden gem. So, in simple words, the UCB algorithm essentially says, let's try the option that has the best combination of being good and being a bit of a mystery. In this way, you're not sticking to popular spots, but you're also giving the new uncertain places a fair shot, especially if they show early promise, right? If they have some good reviews. Another algorithm is the Thomson sampling. They use probabilities to balance expected reward and uncertainty dynamically. As an example, you and your friends are trying to pick a movie to watch. You have some idea of what genres each friend likes, but you're not entirely sure. So Thomson sampling is like a data-driven approach in picking the movie. And here's how it goes. You create probable profiles for each friend. You create a probable profile of their movie preferences based on what you know. For example, you might think Sarah or Igor is an 80% fan of comedies, but there is a chance he's a 90% fan. He, she, whatever. So you run a simulation for your movie night and you randomly generate a simulated preference for each friend based on the probable profiles. And then you pick the winner for this round. Based on one simulation, you pick the movie that best matches everybody's simulated preferences. And you update and repeat. So you see how much everybody enjoyed the movie and update their probable profiles. The next time it's your turn to pick a movie, you run a new simulation with these updated profiles. And it's powerful because it naturally balances exploration and exploitation. And if you're very if you're very certain a friend loves a genre, their simulated preference will be likely high for that genre. If you're certain their simulated preference could be anything, giving other genres a chance to be explored. And then we have the Gittings index, and I believe we will be covering that in the next segment, explained by Igor. But in short, this is more an advanced solution that scores each option by how valuable further explanation would be. Those algorithms that we discussed, you most likely have encountered them every day. When YouTube recommends a video, it's exploiting what worked and occasionally exploring a new genre to see if you will bite. Or Spotify choosing your next song. Netflix, when deciding to recommend something you are most likely to watch, exploit, or offer something new. Amazon, designing which product to review for the future. So it's there every day. And you know what is more interesting? Younger people explore more than older people exploit more. When you're young, we have less experience,
This is
more
very
time
important.
ahead.
I
Sorry?
want the, this is very. I want our listeners to really pay attention to what Angelika is about to say. This is very, very interesting and important.
Okay, so younger people explore more and older people exploit more. So when you're young, we have less experience, more time ahead, fewer commitments. And that makes it rational, even optimal to explore more, to try new jobs, meet new people, different people, travel, experiment with music, food, ideas, and you don't know yet what works best for you. And you have decades ahead to benefit from what you discover. So even if exploration sometimes fails, the long term the long-term value of what you learn outweighs the short-term costs, right? And as we age, and I'm an oldie, 63 years old, things shift. We already explored a lot and we gathered all that data. And we have figured out what we like, what works, what we trust, and so on. And we have less time left to enjoy the rewards of new discoveries. And as a fact, as a person, I know I do this. I go to the same things. I even watch a movie 5 times because I love it, right? So when we start to exploit as a human being, as a youngster, choosing options we know and brings good results, from there we will learn. And we oldies, we have less time left to enjoy the new discoveries. And we go to the same restaurant, we stick with the same brand, we avoid risky chances. And that's not being boring, it's about being efficient. You're maximizing your reward based on what you have already learned. And you know why? Let's say you are in a city for just 5 days. If you choose a new restaurant and you have about 5 more great experiences. If you do not, you will just have one bad experience and you can try another one the next day. But if you are only 1 day, or if you have only 1 day, it's better not to risk and to go with that thing that you already know. And the same applies to life, and that seems to be hardwired in our brain. Behavioral research and com- Mike, the same applies to life, and that seems to be hardwired in our brain. Behavioral research and computational modeling, sorry, from I'm a Dutchie, suggests that humans naturally transition from exploration to exploitations at a fairly consistent average rate. Do you? I think it's a 25 to 30 years old, right, Igor?
Yes, that's around about that time. Yes.
Yeah. Can you give us an example here?
Yeah. So it is interesting what you said. Like as you said, and it said perfectly. Around 25, between 25 to 30 years old. I mean, it depends on each person, culture, social status, economics, and all of that. But it's around that age. We started to switching from exploring more, meaning like trying new things, and we started just to do the things we already know. Let me give you an example. Music is an example. Um, once we before we reach, let's say 30 years old. Actually, the average it's 28 years old, but let's say 30 just to round a little bit. So before you reaching 30 years old, you're more likely to always try new things in terms of like new bands, new styles of music. Oh, you listen to rock, and then oh, let me check this hip hop group, and then you're just exploring because your sample is small. And if you like something, you have the rest of your life, which is like a few decades still, considered like average life expectancy, to enjoy that until when you reach that age, you're not very likely to try a new band or new food or new things. You just do or new type of movies. You just do whatever you already know and like. Um, and that's what is interesting. That is the same in all the mammals, monkeys, dogs, lab rats. So with the equivalent will be 28 years old. It's kind of the switch point on average. So that's let's say they did experiments with mice in mazes, and basically the mice have to find the end of the maze, and there will be food there, like the reward. When they're younger, they'll try different routes to get to the food, or they try different foods more often. When they get older, they know better. Oh, I like these. I like, I don't know, Gruyere cheese. I just go to Gruyere cheese. I'm not going to try the other kind of cheese or the other way to solve this maze. I know what the strategy I already know. That's called aging, but it's hardwired in the statistics. What I try to do to myself is two things. I try to use this concept to my advantage, but I also try to break it to my advantage to help my brain health. So I try to force myself into learning new languages, into trying different types of bands or different types of music, etc. Food. I always try to explore. So I like the epsilon greedy algorithm. I try to apply to myself. Like, uh, thankfully, my wife does not listen to us, which is a shame. But thankfully, in this case, because then she will learn my strategy. But like the biggest, most difficult decision any couple make is not where you're gonna live or who's right or who's wrong. It's what we're gonna eat. Every time when you ask the question, oh, I'm hungry. Let's order out. Yeah, what do you want to eat? And then the 3 hours to make a decision. So here's what I do. 90% of the time, I get one of the five options that we like. 10% of the time, I try something new, a new restaurant. Maybe some type of food that we already like, because I mean, I live in the US. There's not a lot, in Atlanta, there's not a lot of options. So we're very limited in terms of options. When we live in LA, that was good, because then once every month, there was the 10% ish. We went to a totally different restaurant. And then I found like great places, not so good, but at the end of the day, overall was good. When I'm working and when I'm traveling to work, and sometimes I go to do a training, and I'm there for only 3 days. So I don't explore, I exploit. So I ask them, the locals, hey, can you give me like a couple of restaurant recommendations? And they gave me, and if I go on the first or second day and I really like the restaurant, I go in the same restaurant second or the third day. I exploit. Because my sample is small, I only have 3 days. But if I'm going to a project where I'll be there longer or I'll do multiple trips, I don't ask for recommendations of restaurants. And if you're a customer and you listen to me, you probably realize, oh, it's not that I don't care about your opinion. It's just because I'm using math, I'm using statistics. So if I'm there longer, then I explore more. So then I randomly, I just drive around and, okay, let me try that restaurant. Okay, like, do not like, because if I like, I have more days to enjoy it. And if I dislike, I only had one bad experience, as Angelika explained. So you can apply this to make a lot of different decisions. And I really like the epsilon greedy strategy. The Thompson sampling is also an interesting one when you have like new data coming in. Like you're watching, for example. Oh, that's another example. What is the average? Not related to this, but I really do this. And they say, oh, Igor, you're so autistic. Yes, I am. But I'm not a computer. I'm not an AI, but I run in algorithms.
No, really?
I don't know. AI, Alcantara, Igor, maybe. So, so what I do when I'm watching a new show on like streaming. A lot of people, and that's one of the reasons I don't like anime, because all the anime fans, they say, "Oh, you're gonna love this show." It's just the first 200 episodes are not so good, but then it's amazing. No, come on. That's 200 episodes is way more than the 37% rule. So I applied the 37% rule in that case. So what is the average? What is the average number of episodes in a season today? I mean, before we have like seasons with like 50, 60 episodes each season. Now it's usually 13, sometimes 10. So I give any show people recommend to me. If I don't like the first episode, I don't stop it. I watch 3 or 4 episodes, depending on how long is the season. So I apply the 37% rule, and that's conscious. I make that conscious decision. I watch 3 and 4 and give it a chance. If I like it, or if the third episode is better than the other ones, then I give it a chance and I finish the season. If not, I quit early so I don't waste my time watching a show that, oh, only the last episode is good. No, it's not good for me. The story has to be good. But I use the 37% rule to decide, should I keep watching or not? Anyway, um,
Yeah,
that's it.
I do the same. I do the same. I think and unconsciously I do the same. Like I just give it a chance, 3, 4 episodes, and then I will decide. And
It's
this, well,
consciously, but
let's
it's in
face
our
it.
DNA. It's in our DNA because it's part of
Yeah,
it's a survival skill. Um,
yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah, I
think
think
of
so. And
ourselves.
it applies to everything. Eh? Yeah,
Yeah, anthropologists they theorize about this. Think of
yeah,
not ourself. I mean, I'm not that old, but our ancestors living in the jungle, maybe 50,000, 100,000 years ago. Some Australopithecus, some like human Ferences, some before Homo sapiens. So we were there, and we had two options. Should we try different types of food? That's because if they are good, it's good for me because I have different types of nutrients, different types of vitamins, etc. So that's good. So I will explore more. But then I can get a poison one, which can give me some really bad diarrhea, and but I'll survive, or can kill me. So there's a risk. So when to stop exploring and start exploiting, and how to balance those. So it is related to this. And so balancing, if I only exploit, then I'm only eating the same thing. So I'm missing a lot of vitamins. So I'm not gonna survive long. But if I explore too much, then my chances of getting something poisonous or they'll kill me,
yeah,
it's also larger. So there's a trade-off. That's why we call this exploited.
yeah.
And it's possibly, I mean, there's no way we know this for sure. That's why it happened. But we see that in all of the memos. So it's probably something we learn from evolution. And it's
I think so.
and if we still have, and if all species have, it is because and the only working mammals, as far as we know, is because our memory is more advanced than in other classes of animals. So it's probably because it's something that helps us to survive. So that's why it's
Exactly.
hardwired in the brain. Even if you don't think consciously like myself, you might do it anyway, just because it sounds the right thing to do. It's in our
Yeah,
brain.
yeah. So it's it is the truth, right? And let's face it, we humans, we also tend to fall into patterns, right? If we stay too long in comfortable jobs, routines, or relationships, we are over exploiting. Or we chase novelty, constantly never committing, we are over exploring. So understanding, as we discussed it now, this trade-off, it's key to good decision making, especially when we work with uncertainty and evolving information. And in a world flooded with choices that we have to make in businesses, in our personal life, it's not just about picking what's best know now, but it's about staying open and what might be better next, right? So, Igor, I can't wait to hear your story around the Gittix index. I know with the help of the Giddings index, we can assign single power scores of each of our options. But give us some insights, Igor.
Absolutely. So I'm not doing any math here. I'm not giving you guys any formula, but you guys can take can do a little research on that if you guys want, because we are podcasters audio that will be very boring. But there's a formula behind all of this, but I explained the logic behind it. And about actually, there was something that Angelika mentioned, the multi-arm bandit. I just remember that I have an article. It's actually videos, but if you go to datavoice.net, you'll find it. You search for multi-arm bandits. I have an example how to do it in Click, how to use the technique in Click, like to calculate, for example, how do I change my sales or marketing strategy, or and things like that. But talking about the Gideon's index, um, it is one of the algorithms that Angelika described in the explorer versus exploit dilemma. And this one that we picked to explain in a little bit more detail, but not too much because it's already been a long episode. So it was developed by mathematician John Giddings. That's why it got his name in late
I
1970s.
think.
And it's a powerful tool for decision making when the environment is uncertain. So especially in problems that you don't know the true payoff of each option, but you have some evidence. So it's most commonly applied to the multi-arm bandit problem. So then my video that I mentioned on the datavoyagers.net website actually shows how you do that in Click, which would be interesting. But basically, the multi-arm bandit it's a choice in between multiple options, like slot machines. Now, and each one of them has unknown but different rewards. That's the basic. So basic strategies like Epsilon Greedy or UCB, they make decent decisions, but the Giddings index give us an optimal one in terms of mathematics when certain assumptions are met. So there's a requirements. So what does it actually do? It calculates a dynamic score for each option, not just based on how well it has done, but also based on how uncertain it still is, the environment, how much, basically, in technical terms, the size of the entropy, but how much things we do not know, how much you stand to learn from trying it again, how much you are willing to explore, you're willing to learn, and how much time you have left to benefit from the learning. That's also another thing. So this score represents the value of continual exploration, that option versus switching to others. So should I keep doing exploring or should I exploit? It's the same as asking how much is worth keep going with this, even if I'm not sure, because of what I might still learn and how it might pay off. Like stock marketing or investment is another example. Or when you have things that require a lot of investment. And this is also another use case. For example, clinical trials. Pharmaceutical clinical trials, they are very, very expensive. We're talking about millions, hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars invested. So let's say you're running a medical trial for 3 possible treatments. And you see some early promising results from treatment A, but it's still unclear. Treatment B, it's average, it's not very promising, but it's consistent. So the Giddens index help us decide, should I assign more patients to treatment A, hoping they will prove to be the best? So then I'm basically doing more exploration. I'm aiming to learn more. Or should I stick with the one that I already know is decent? It's not the best one, but it's decent, which is treatment B. So, and I'm not even talking about the third option yet. So the goal here is to balance helping current patients, exploit, with gathering enough information to make better choices for future patients, which is explore. So the Giddings index will quantify that trade-off, will give you a number, so then you can make a decision. Okay, what makes sense to me? How much budget do I have? How much time? How serious is this disease, etc. In finance or portfolio allocation, let's say you're investing in startup companies, in stocks or crypto. So some of the options in your portfolio have shown some strong growth early on, but we don't know the actual full potential. There's still a lot of risk. Do you keep investing on like the ones that you know they're good performers, but they don't give you as much return as this one could give you? It's like early on, like years ago, before Facebook was Facebook. People were asking, should I invest in this like startup company from this dropout from Harvard, or should I invest in, I don't know, Coca-Cola, General Electric, those companies that I know they are solid? So that's the trade-off. Getting index quantifies the trade-off, so you can make a decision. Do I need the money now? So then I go to the exploit, or can I wait to the future? So I'll go to the exploit. Now, In AI machine learning, they also, some of the
Yeah.
algorithms, like in reinforcement learning, for example, they always have to decide, do I try a new path or do I stick to the one that I know that works, but not necessarily is the optimal? So algorithms like the epsilon greedy and Giddens index are good tools for that. But we cannot use the Giddens index anywhere. We have some limitations. It works best in discounted, we call, it's a very strange technical term, but I'll explain it. We call discounted infinite horizon problems. Means that it assumes you're making decisions over a long, potentially infinite time frame, and the future rewards matter a little less than immediate reward. So there's a trade-off of waiting. It's not like retirement. Retirement, you should not use this. You should go to the exploit. Um, is also computation expensive. To process this in a computer, it takes more time than other algorithms like epsilon greedy. It's epsilon greedy is really common for like advertisements, for example. Um, and so in a lot of reward systems, other methods like the Thompson sampling or even Bayesian optimization will be better. Okay. Um, but the concept behind the Giddens index is still very, very valid. Value every option, not just for what you have seen, but for what you still might learn. And in HR and management, this is so valid. This is so valid. There are a lot of managers that they behave like the Queen of Hearts. Remember the Queen of Hearts from the Alice in the Wonderland? Any little mistake, cut the head. So there's a lot of managers. They hire someone and they fire that person within 1 month, 2 months. They don't give that person the chance to actually learn and grow. Of course, if there's something very serious, the person is dishonest or stole money from the company. Of course, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about natural learning curve. Not
That's
everybody
the
will be a rock
strategic
star.
patience, right?
Yeah. So, but how much patient? So,
Yeah.
how much patient you will be?
Yeah.
Well, you can use these algorithms. Well, what is the average turnover in my company? People usually stay for 7 years. I can try to apply the 37% rule to give them a chance. I I recommend the Giddy Index because there is benefit of the learning. I keep them learning because they'll learn your company culture, etc., customers. So you have a way better reward if they actually learn and develop. Of course, you
Yeah.
have to give them the chance, the real chance. Otherwise, it's not fair.
Yeah.
But so I'm just saying that because in every decision in our professional or personal life, we can use these techniques to make better decisions.
Yeah.
Now, Angelika,
I have a
uh,
question.
yeah,
Yeah,
go
I
for it.
have a question. I was doing some research, and to make it more clear, if you to yeah, so to explain the Gittings index even a little bit more thorough, if you had to choose between sticking with a slot machine that has given you small but steady wins, or trying a new one with completely unknown odds, how would you decide when to switch? And what kind of information would you need to make that decision? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, I'll now use Giddings there because then my information is so because the risks are higher because I could be basically losing my money.
Hmm.
In
So you
that
would not
case,
choose for the Gittings Gittings
no, you choose
index.
either the epsilon greedy
Okay.
or you choose the 37% rule. So if I apply the 37% rule, I'll do
Yeah.
that based on, you can do based on the time. Let's say I'll spend 3 hours in the casino, but I think that's risky. I would choose based on the money I want to lose. So every time you go to a casino or something similar, um, you need to know, there are two things you need to know. One is not so hard, the other is very hard. You need to know when to quit when you're losing. You need to know when to quit when you're winning. So let's say I'll walk in to the slot machine with $100. I'll allow myself to lose $37 before making a decision on the slot machine, the 37% rule. If I
Interesting.
apply, depends on the mood. If I apply the epsilon greedy, I'll now use the money. Then I'll use this. Okay, I'm gonna explore this number of machines. Let's say I'm gonna explore five, six, or 10, let's just say 10 machines, just to make the math easier. I'll do 10 machines. So let me 90% of the time I will go with the machines that are paying better, but 10% of the time I'll switch. I'll try a different one. So every 10 times, so let's say I'll play 9 times in the machines that I know that are paying well, and 1 time in a new machine. 9 times in a machine that I know is paying better, 1 time in a new machine. I'll do Epsilon greedy. So that, but depend in casino, it's like it's very depends on what I'm playing, basically. But you need to know where to stop.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's usually good around, and that's a complicated math that makes this episode longer. It's usually around 100 150 100 or to 150% of what you wanted to lose or willing to lose. Let's say I'm walking in with $100 with all my credit cards because I don't want to like go crazy and sell my house and my kids. $100, that's how much I will maximum will lose. So
Yeah.
then if I win on top of that 100, another 100, 150, then I'm stopping
Yeah. It
because
depends on the
based on the,
choice. Yeah. It
because of
depends
the
on the
base,
choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
because based on the laws of the large numbers, there's the basic laws in statistics. The casino will always win on the long term
Yeah.
because the casino
Always.
only loses money when they pay you. When
Yep.
you're winning, the casino is not losing. By the way, when you're winning, the casino is not losing because the money is still in the casino. They only lose it if you decide to stop playing and you cash your money and you leave. Then they lost.
Yeah.
So they can, if you keep playing, they are not losing. You're losing
Uh,
because you do not have that
Interesting.
option.
Yeah.
So that's mathematically that's
Yeah.
what I
A
would.
lot of mathematical things. Gittix index, like epsilon greedy. But we should take a turn, right? From
Let's talk
math and
about choice.
optimization, and we talk about feelings. Because when we look at the feelings, even the most rational decisions are shaped by something less measurable, how we feel about the choices that are available to us, right? And that brings us actually to the concept that turns classical economics on its head, turns it upside down. It's the paradox of choice. And the paradox of choice is coined by the psychologist Barry Schwartz. Um, and the assumption is here that more options is more freedom, is better decision. But it turns out too many choices can actually make us very miserable. Think about it. When you go to the supermarket and you want to buy toothpaste, and you're with 47 types of toothpaste, what to choose? Or you scroll down through Netflix for 30 minutes, what to watch. And then at the end, you rewatch something you already seen 5 times. I know that I do that sometimes. We're just scrolling through HBO or Amazon or Netflix, and I end up with a movie that I already saw. Hold on, I have to cough. That terribly itchy throat, but also in our maybe but it's also in our data and analytics world, right? You try you try to build a dashboard with 100 KPIs. I know I have seen dashboards with 400 KPIs. Really crazy. I saw 400 graphs that telling the same story, and your audience ignores all of them. And as I say, this is a classical example of information overload. Your public cannot see the trees for the forest anymore. And we all have been there. And it's not just inconvenient, it's a cognitive overload. Another cough, sorry. Why does too much choice make us unhappy? Well, there are some examples that we will discuss. Sorry. Decision paralysis. I like that one. So when there are too many options to choose from, or we overthink the situation too much, you end up with not making a decision at all. And it's a feeling of being stuck because you are overwhelmed by the choices or afraid of making a choice. In one famous study, when we're 10 times more, we are 10 times more likely to buy jam when given 6 options than offered 24. And this can happen also with big life choices like picking a career or with small daily tasks like choosing what to wear. The result is often procrastination or stalling or avoiding the decision altogether. Next to the decision paralysis, we have also the increased regret and self blame. After we make a choice, we start thinking about the alternatives we didn't choose, and we think, hmm, the more options we had, the more likely we had to feel regret, even if we made a perfectly good decision. Worse than we do feel regret, we blame ourselves. I should have known better. So, as an example, imagine you kept putting off studying for a big exam, procrastination, and you told yourself, I start tomorrow every day. When you finally get your test results, you see you failed the test. And the regret here is the strong feeling of, I wish I had started studying earlier. And the self blame is the voice in your head saying, this is all my own fault. I'm so lazy. If I just had studied, I would have passed this test. The more you procrastinated, the more intense the feelings of regret and self blame become after the negative outcome. And then we have a third one is the escalating expectations. More options raise the bar, right, Igor? If you have 100 genes to choose from, you expect to find the perfect pair, and what you get is only pretty good. It feels like a failure, right? And paradoxically, more choices lead to lower satisfaction, even when the outcome is objectively better. A real life example. Imagine, and I know we talked about kitchens earlier. Um, you decide to clean the kitchen to be helpful. The initial task here is that you just start washing the dishes, right? And the first escalation is as you finish, you think, well, now the sink is clean, but the counters look dirty. In comparison, I should wipe those too, so I wipe them. The second escalation is after wiping those counters, you notice the floor has some crumbs and you think, oh, the kitchen won't truly look clean unless I sweep the floor. So let's sweep the floor. And escalation 3 is after sweeping, you see the trash can is full and you decide, I might well take out the trash to finish the job properly. You started out with something simple, washing the dishes, but your own expectations of what a clean kitchen looks like kept growing. The small manageable task escalated into a much bigger project, making it feel more daunting than when you started with only one task. And in the world of data analytics, this has serious implications because we often assume that the more data we present, the more informed the decision will be. Well, what happens actually? A dashboard with 60 charts create confusion, not clarity. Exactly. A data catalog with dozens of similar reports overwhelms users. They don't know what to choose. A self-service BI environment without curation turns into a digital junk drawer. Everything will be in there and they don't know what to do anymore. So in short, unlimited access does not equal better decisions. What decision makers often need is not more data, it's well structured options, context, and guidance. Sometimes the best dashboard is 3 or 4 charts, not 30. And sometimes the best model is the one that tells a story, not the one that hits 95% accuracy and confuses everybody. This is why the social media algorithms that choose for us what we should watch are so addictive. Instagram, looking at all those short video clips. I do the same. Sometimes I get hooked on it and I think, oh, already 30 minutes have passed. How? It makes us save brain energy by not having to think and to choose. So, how can we curate the paradox of choice? How can we fight it? Curate. Don't just collect. Whether it's content, KPIs, recommendations, give people fewer but better options. Add constraints. Constraints do not limit creativity, they focus. Right? When you build a dashboard and you have those analytical experiences, constraints help teams to prioritize what matters, what really has to be done. Pre-decide. That's also a good one. So to fight the paradox of choice, pre-decide some choices. Defaults matter. Make smart defaults based on what works for most people and allow customization for edge cases. And I always like to do the 80/20, right? Um, 80 is what I know is default,
Mhm.
is good, and the 20 is extra. Or use decision frameworks, right? Help people structure their thinking, whether it's a scorecard, a decision matrix, or an insight to action flow. Structure reduces anxiety. Anxiety, how do I say that word? Anxiety, right? Um, the paradox of choice teaches us something profound. Sometimes giving less is the most empowering thing you can do. So, whether you're designing a dashboard, mentoring a team, or choosing dinner, remember clarity beats abundance. But we need to take care of biases and flaw logic. And Igor, I do believe this is something that you are going to discuss. And I believe our show is getting very long this time.
Yes,
But
I'll try to make it short, but yes.
yeah,
Uh, and just in a comment on what you said, that's why, for example, if you come to the US, you probably won't understand my references. I prefer like In and Out or Five Guys burgers because they have like three, four options, easy to choose. Then
yeah.
if I go for I don't know, some other restaurants like Cheesecake Factory, that the menu has like 120 pages and has every single meal in the world ever that ever existed.
And you know
It's
what I
so
end up?
stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I end up with at the Cheesecake Factory?
What?
Every time the same thing I'm eating because
Yeah.
the choices
It's
are overwhelming.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. It's unbelievable. But let's talk
Yeah.
about biases and flaw logic. Most of us think that we're rational. Oh, I will provide the customer. So let's say we're trying to sell something. I'll provide the customer with like the price sheets. And of course, I mean, we are the best option. Logically, we won the most awards. We have the better price, we have the best services, more experience, and they go with another company. We think another example in politics. I don't want to get I
Too
don't want to get
political.
into political, but in Brazil is there is a, and I think other places probably as well. If you ask people what are the most important issues that the government should take care of, they put health, education, and security, like safety. Those are the top three all the time. Everybody. And then you get the candidates that have proposals on those. Education is usually number one. You have candidates that the main platform is education. They don't get elected because we think that we're rational, that we make smart, logical decisions, but we are not. Behavioral research, decades of research show that we are systematically irrational, and it's actually very easy to predict so. We're emotional beings, we're not rational beings. That's why AI, conscious AI, will never be equal to human intelligence because they
No,
will be more logical and
that's
we're
the
more
AGI part,
emotional.
right?
Yeah.
The
And we, yes, and we do
yeah.
not want AI to be emotional, by the way. It's not a
No,
good idea.
no,
So
it can't.
um,
No.
yeah, so and the reason is it's not because we're lazy or dumb. It's because our brains evolved to make faster decisions with very small amount of data. I mean, we're not in a lab, like we're in a jungle, and there is a lion running to eat us, and we need to quickly make a decision. Do I go to this tree or that tree? Do I go to this cave or do I swim to the river? We have like 3 seconds to make a decision. Otherwise, it will be eaten by the lion.
Yeah.
Our genes will never survive. So we have to make fast decisions. And that's why we don't have time to make those decisions
Yeah.
in a rational way a lot of time. But when we get modern society, that becomes a problem. That's where heuristics and biases come in. So what are heuristics? Heuristics are basically mental shortcuts. They are basically rules of thumbs of a brain used to simplify problems that are too complex. It's kind of a quick and dirty algorithm. So they're usually helpful because it helps us to do quick decisions, but they're not usually, or they're not always the best decisions, but they are the most efficient ones because we can make them with lower amount of data really fast.
Yep.
And that they create what we call, and they're based on memory, they're based on what is hardwired in our brain, our culture, what we learn from our community, family, etc. But they create what we call cognitive bias. Those are bias um, that where remember system one, they will command everything. So the system one, the ones that are most predominant in animals, not other, I mean, we also animals, but other than us. So that's when we make those fast, dirty decisions. And then they come the cognitive bias. So, and we have a few bias. For example, availability bias. We judge the likelihood of events based on how easy it is to see examples or to remember examples. So if you see a few news about plane crashes, you might irrational start fearing flying, even though rationally air travel is statistically the most safer one. It's much safer than driving. But because we saw there was a availability, we saw some news about um, flight crashes. We don't see as much as car because they happen so much. So every day, it's not even news anymore. Um, in data analytics, this bias can cause teams to overweight recent trends or high-profile incidents, ignoring long-term patterns. Something happens, oh, it's the end of the world, or something good happens, oh, we're in a good trend. Not necessarily. Another one of these cognitive biases is what we call anchoring. We rely heavily on the first piece of information we receive, even if that information is irrelevant. Like some people believe in horoscope, like, oh, I'm a Taurus, and it's irrelevant. So let's say someone tells you that the average price of a click consultant is $500 an hour. Even seeing one is 350 hours feels like a deal, regardless of the market reality. The market reality is like 350 is also extremely expensive. I wish I was making that. So that's anchoring. You find the first piece of information, you ignore everything else. That becomes more important than everything else. Another one is confirmation bias. This is like very, very known type of bias already. So we seek out or favor information that confirms what we already believe, and we ignore everything else. So a marketer who thinks that TikTok is the best channel must unconsciously cherry pick data to support this idea. And if we're talking about data and data storytelling, this is dangerous because it's easy to massage the message instead of letting insights emerge in an honest way. There's many examples on confirmation bias, but I remember years ago I read. People know I read a lot of like science papers every week, at least 2 or 3. And there was one I remember I read many years ago was about a research. It's about political opinion. So they took people who identify themselves as Republican, as Democrats, and Independent, and they showed a piece of, it was a quote from a politician. People had no idea who said it, and then they said, okay, and the topic was about the death penalty. And when the people were pro death penalty, and they asked to read the tax and said, okay, do you think this tax support death penalty or is against death penalty? If you're pro, you say, no, I think this tax supports death penalty. If they were against, they say, no, this tax, this quote, actually it's against death penalty. And at some point, oh, if they are a Democrat, they'll say, "Oh, I think there was a Democrat person that says that," or for the Republic, I think a Republican person said that, etc. Um, so they eliminated part of the tax and only focus on the things that they, it was in alignment to what they believed. Another thing is called we call this is very, very, very true. If you bought a car recently, which I know Angelika did, you probably experienced this. It's called loss aversion. Losing losses hurt twice as much as equivalent of gains feels. So losing hurts twice as much as gaining. And why is that important? The fear is one of the great engines of humanity, of technology development. Fearing something, fearing a war, fearing a disease, fearing whatever, it drives people way more than simply hope. We said that in the last episode of Game Theory. Fear for decision making is stronger than hope. Not necessarily it's a good strategy, but it's what works. People are more likely to stick with the failing strategy than just cut the losses admitting they lost. In terms of data, this might show up as reluctancy to kill a dashboard that nobody uses, to keep it funding a model that is or isn't that has never delivered value. Why I said car buying, when you go to a car dealer shop and you like a car, but you're not ready to make a decision. You wanted to stick to 37% rule. You want to explore more before exploiting. And then the car salesman says, "Oh, this if you don't sign now, I mean, there's another person who wants the same car. It might not be available." So they trying to appeal to the fear of losing them because it's way better than it's way bigger than the actual pleasure of gaining something. Another one
Uh,
is the yeah.
I didn't experience that one. I
Okay,
didn't experience that one.
maybe
No.
that's only in the U.S. In Brazil as well. And
Yeah.
another one is overconfidence bias. We all overestimate how much we know and how accurate our predictions are. So analysts might report predictions with too little margin of error, or executives might make bold, risky bets with unjustified certainty, ignoring uncertain signals in the data. And the scary part is that this bias don't go away with more information because we don't make decisions based on data. We make decisions based on emotions. We should make decisions based on data. I mean, we work with the data-driven decision making. That's why we're making this episode. But it's something that we need to fight against our own nature. But when we do, we should make better decisions. So how can we fight this? Um, Use structured decision making frameworks like these ones that we use. Use data, use your click dashboards, etc. Very, very important. Slow down when the stakes are high. Don't wait too much because then you're making your company or decision making to become like a dinosaur. No, you have to make decisions quick, but not too anxious. Uh, and also, another tip that I give to people is there's a lot of easy decisions. Make those fast. Those are system one decisions. What to wear, what to eat. Those are easy decisions. Now, when to let someone go, when to go to a new technology, then you should take more time to do it. Um, on purpose, seek different opinions, disconfirming evidence. Try to prove you wrong and ask people to prove you wrong. And if they cannot, that just makes you that path, that decision that you're about to make stronger. And leverage data visualization because it is just shortcut. Seeing data, it's faster to actually see what's the trends than just seeing numbers in a table. So at the end of the day, ask yourself, is this an insight or just a shortcut in disguise? Am I being irrational? I'm being emotional, or am I being rational? And of course, we are not computers. We have to consider all of that. Now, to close this episode, Angelika, please give us some strategies to make better decisions. And let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So So far, we discussed how decisions are shaped by psychologically, phew, probability and trade-offs and so on. But there are some interesting things that you can use to make your decision. So you can use decision trees. They are powerful tools that map your choices and outcomes and risks, right? You can you can say, for example, if the customer churns, what do we offer next? Or if the forecast misses the mark, how do we adjust budget allocations? It helps us to externalize thinking and visualize consequences. Very important. We can use the estimated expected value, the EV. That's one of the most powerful concepts in decision science and shockingly underused outside finance and gaming. We can go in it, but I think we could do a show around that topic of decision making, right? And the things surrounded by it, like this, the frameworks that we can use and so on. But EV is the probability of outcome times the value outcome. And let's say you're evaluating two marketing campaigns, and one has 70% chance of generating 10K, and the other one has a 30% chance of generating 30K. Both of value 7 and 9K about, but now you can quantify the risk reward trade off. If your business can tolerate variability, the second might be better to the safer bet. It helps you to compare options on a common scale grounded in math, not gut. And then we have another probabilistic thinking or deterministic thinking. More simple words for a Dutchie like me, but oh, it's difficult. Um, we often treat decisions as binary. Will it work or not? Will the customer buy or not? But real life is about probability of uncertainty in every choice that we have. From a probabilistic thinking manner to ask what's likely to happen, not what will happen, or what is the range of outcomes and how should I prepare for each. That mind shift that makes us more resilient and less surprised. And that's also the foundation of Bayesian thinking, where you update your beliefs based on new evidence and not stick rigidly to the prior assumptions. Then we have run pre-mortems. We often run post-mortems after something fails, but then the damage already flips that around. You gather your team and you say, imagine this decision turns out to be a disaster. What went wrong? And this unlocks insight that planning, hidden risk, unrealistic assumptions, and stakeholders who were overlooked. And believe me, those stakeholders are usually the worst. And then understand opportunity cost. Number five, time or money. Real cost is what you give up by choosing one thing over another. And that is what we call the opportunity cost. In a data team, it looks like building a dashboard no one uses when you could have improved a critical one, or running endless A and B tests when you could have invested in a foundational data. Um, Number six, the design for better defaults. Here's a surprising truth. Most people go with the default. In fact, organ donation rates in countries with opt-out policies are dramatically higher than those with opt-in. Not because people care less or more, but because they stick what is pre-selected. And this means design dashboards with smart defaults, set up thresholds and alerts so decisions aren't buried in noise. Use guided analytics to directly focus for direct user focus. And I know our favorite tool Click, can do those kind of things. Um, and then we have the topic of collective intelligence. Be aware of groupthink. We also say wisdom of the crowd, right? Um, Imagine a jar full of jelly beans. If you ask one person, guess how many are inside, they'll likely be wrong. But if you ask a large group of people and average their guesses, the result is often surprisingly close to the actual number. And this is a simple example of collective intelligence. It's the idea that a group of people that work together can be smarter than more effective than a single individual. And this happens when people share the diverse knowledge that they have, their perspective and their skills to solve a problem or decision. And that's why I love to work with teams. But groupthink um, is a very important element. So imagine there is a team of business executives who are all friends, and the CEO proposes a new product that one of the executives, Mrs. Alpha, she thinks it's a bad idea. However, at the table, she sees everybody else nodding in agreement, and she doesn't want to be the one that spoils the issue and cause a conflict. So she stays silent. And another executive, Mr. Delta, also has doubts. But he figures that if everyone else is on board, he must be wrong. In the end, everybody agrees to a bad idea because no one was willing to speak up. To counter this, it's best to assign a devil's advocate. Use anonymous polling before a discussion, or encourage debate before convergence. Oh, difficult word again, right? Uh, but guys, use the right tools and know the limits. Data platforms like Click can be powerful allies if used with discipline. Use them to visualize trade-off, stimulate what-if scenarios, run segmentation or cohort analysis, track confidence intervals, not just average. But remember, tools do not replace thinking, they amplify it. If your questions are bad, the charge, aka the answers, won't save you. And I think that concludes our session for today, right?
Exactly. I know that our
Yeah.
episode is the longest so far, but I'm not going to apologize because I
Yes,
think
it is.
we're delivering a great episode. There was a lot of things we had to cover. So that's the decision making we had to make. We had two choices: not explore exploit, but was like do an episode shorter, but forget about all of the important pieces, or do a more complete episode. And people can listen to in multiple days, just as you listen to a little bit, you pause, you continue the next day. That's why it's a good idea to subscribe to our podcast, like Spotify, any other platform, so then you can pause, continue later with no problem. So every decision carries a cost, not just in outcomes, but in opportunity, attention, regret, and the more we understand the science of decision making and the algorithm of choice, the better equipped we are to navigate uncertainty in data, in life, and leadership. So we hope today's episode gave you a deeper appreciation of how decisions are really made and what tools you can use to make them just a little bit better. Again, subscribe to Data Voyages podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Overcast, etc. And visit us at
Yep.
datavoyages.net. Thank you, Angelika. Thank you, everyone who listens to us. Until next time, navigate boldly, choose wisely.